Hi, welcome to the newest episode of Sports Talk Central. I'm your host, Deep Mahmood, with my normal co-host Hunter, and today we're going to be talking about Ravens Steelers Week 18, basically about some of the playoff stuff, and then had some Michigan, Washington college football playoff, and the head coach Carousel in potential for Black Monday. So let's start with Ravens and Steelers. This is our first show in 2-3 weeks.
Happy New
Ravens
Year,
had
everyone.
happy New Year. Yeah, Ravens had nothing to play for. It was just pretty much get everyone leave the game healthy. That's basically what it was. Leave the game healthy, and that was it.
Not for the Steelers, obviously. They had everything to play for. Their season was on the line. They get the 17-10 win. As the game went on, you could see apologize, my Wi-Fi is being a little weird for everyone. I don't know what the heck's going on. I think the Ravens got disinterested as the game went on. The conditions were terrible. That massive winter storm was rolling through. The Steelers had everything to play for. They eventually got the 17-10 win. There were a lot of these fumbles that happened throughout the game, but they were able to clinch the game late in the fourth quarter when I believe it was Gus Edwards who fumbled it.
Yep.
Hopefully that's not a problem in the playoffs for the Ravens. And then the Steelers were able to ice that game, make it 17-7 with 3 minutes to go. The Ravens had no timeouts. The game's over at that point. Then they needed some help to get it in. They got it from the Tennessee Titans. I don't know if that was Mike Vrabel's last game, but if it was, they played for him. I know there's a lot of very mid head coaches in the NFL. I think Vrabel is at least average. I think they may give him another chance, for next year. But I also could see them going in a different direction. If it's also Derrick Henry's last game, because he's a free agent in March, what a way to go out. He's been, I think, arguably the best running back in the league for the last 8 years. But the Jaguars just very fraudulent these last 6 to 7 weeks.
8-3 to 9-8.
8-3. And they lost what? 6 of their last 7 games.
And weren't they the number one seed at one point? Weren't they the number one seed?
Yes. How often have you seen an 8-3 team lose 6 of 7 and miss the playoffs?
Not often.
No. It almost reminds me, you remember this. Remember when Josh McDaniels was the Broncos head coach? They went 6-0 to start the season, and then they finished 8-8, right?
Yeah.
So it honestly just kind of reminds me of that. And I don't know what to make of Trevor Lawrence at this point. I think he's fine. Is he a franchise guy? I don't know. I know he was banged up today, and he's been banged up a good bit this season, but I don't know. Just so far, I haven't been super as impressed with him as I have been, Herbert, Burrow, a couple of these other guys. That's going to be an interesting team to watch over the offseason. Also, with that result, the Buffalo Bills clinch a spot in the playoffs. And for the Steelers, as much as I did crap on Mike Tomlin and the team a few weeks ago, I will give them a little bit of their flowers here for turning this thing around, winning 3 in a row. You go to a quarterback who has not hurt you at all this season, and you got in the dance. I would much rather play in the playoffs, even though the Steelers are not even close to a favorite. I would much rather play in that game.
No TJ Watt next week. No TJ Watt at the very least.
Yeah, and that stinks. Grade 2 MCL sprain. He may try to gut it out. We'll have to see. Probably doubtful. But I'd still rather this team play in the dance. Get those young guys some playoff experience that will help down the line than sit on the couch for another year. That's how I see it. Are the Steelers favorites this year? No, they're not a Super Bowl favorite. They're not a Super Bowl contender. But at least you can say you went to the dance, you got some playoff experience, you were able to turn this thing around, get in. That's big. And again, credit to Mike Tomlin for turning it around. The offensive play calling was a bit better. Mason Rudolph actually played competent football these last 3 weeks, and I expect him to start that playoff game. They are not going to go away from him, I think, for that game, whether it's in Buffalo or in Kansas City. Do you have anything to add about the AFC playoffs? Just what are your thoughts about the AFC playoff field as a whole?
Yeah, sure. So let me first start with Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, is he an elite quarterback? No. Is he someone that you could trust? At least to be competent? Yes. Look, we live in a world where Daniel Jones got paid. We live in that world, guys. Trevor Lawrence is going to get paid by someone.
Probably Jacksonville, to be honest.
Probably Jacksonville. Doug Peterson, I'm going to be really interested. If the Jaguars take another step back next year, I wonder what Doug Peterson's job security is going to look like, because he was good with Philly and then struggled. He looked like he was good in Jacksonville, but if they keep taking steps backwards, I don't know what his job security is going to be. We're going to get into the head coach carousel later in this episode, but it's going to be really interesting what they do there. They should have cap space, but Steelers, I thought Mike Tomlin is a really good coach. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I think Minka's probably going to be playing next week. TJ Watt's there. 3 out of 4 of the AFC North got in. When we get to the head coaching carousel, I'll explain why I think we could see some shift with Cincinnati with potentially their head coaches. But yeah, no, the AFC North is the best division. As for the Ravens, Patrick Queen is going to leave. I think he's going to sign a contract somewhere else. But you know what? I don't know if you noticed it. I don't know how much you paid attention to in yesterday's game. Number 30, Trenton Simpson, he played with a lot of energy.
Yes,
That's
he did.
your PQ replacement. That is your PQ replacement. Him and Roquan. That is going to be the guy. That's going to be the combo. So I think that anyone saying, well, the Ravens defense could struggle without Patrick Queen, that guy is good. That guy. So I'm good there. They did extend Michael Pierce for 2 years, $7.5 million. So that's a solid move there. We'll see what they do with Justin Madubuike. There's so much in the head coaching carousel, so I'll cover this right now. I do not think Mike McDonald is going to be a head coach somewhere else. I think he's going to stick around. I think what they're going to do is they're going to pay him like a head coach, and he's going to be Harbaugh's replacement. Because when I keep thinking about it, you look at all the head coaching candidates, there's a lot of especially younger defensive minds. And also, the Ravens are stable. Mike McDonald, he's not going to lose his stock if he remains a defensive coordinator. He knows he could trust the GM. He could trust a head coach. So I don't think he's going to be a guy that gets an opportunity. I know there's that story about Joe Ortiz, the assistant GM of the Ravens, and Mike McDonald being targeted. Also, if you're thinking about, if they bring in Joe Ortiz, are they going to bring in Mike McDonald? I think that Mike McDonald has long-term potential with the Ravens that I don't think I think Ortiz is going to respect Eric DeCosta. And you can look at an Anthony Weaver or Chris Horton instead as a head coaching candidate with Ortiz. So that's just the Mike McDonald thing. Lamar is MVP. I don't think he's unanimous. And here's the funny thing. I did not care about him winning the MVP until a few weeks ago. The whole thing of stats and passing touchdowns, that's not how you do it. Especially Richard Sherman, who's basically arguing you need at least 30 touchdowns. There's nothing for it. And then I don't know if you caught this story about the Fox Sports Radio. Someone from Fox Sports Radio said, "I want my quarterbacks to be more quarterbacky." It's like,
yeah, I saw that. That was a weird quote.
And he's a great athlete. We all know what that's coded for. We all know what she was trying to say. And you know what's really funny? We haven't seen her comment too much on Twitter. But it seemed like that was there, and she's nowhere to be seen. But it is just interesting. It's just apparently she was a bandwagon Ravens fan until 2019. Someone put up the receipts. It's she was a bandwagon Ravens fan and then became a Chargers fan in I think it was 2018 or 2019. So yeah, that was just a weird thing. Lamar just seems really focused. Lamar just seemed really focused. I think Evan Washburn during an interview a week ago had to tell Lamar to smile. He is intently focused on
they're all in.
And for anyone who says, well, 2019, that they had the rust, first of all, it's Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator, not Greg Roman. It's Mike McDonald as the defensive coordinator, not Wink Martindale. You have, instead of Josh Bynes as and Peanut Awansu as the linebackers, it's Roquan and Patrick Queen. It's not Earl Thomas anymore, it's Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams. The team is younger, more athletic, more focused, better receiving core. Oh yeah, and by the way, if you thought Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Lamar created a nice run game and you thought that maybe losing Keaton Mitchell was bad, guess what they did? Brought in Dalvin Cook with only 67 carries. I mean, imagine what damage Dalvin Cook can do when he's in a rotation. So they got the run game fixed. This is a team that I think is focused on a run. Obviously, I think most of the Ravens staff is going to be in for the college football playoffs to cheer on Jim. But like Ravens are focused. Nothing really. I think the whole Brad Allen, the Lions thing, that was a week ago. But I mean, I thought that was garbage. I thought that was a terrible call for him. Thank goodness he messed it up.
How in the hell did he get to ref our game yesterday?
I think it was that you're not refereeing the playoffs because of what you did, but to make it up for you, we're going to give you this game.
Yeah, I mean, that crew should not be near a playoff game. I don't want to see that crew for any playoff game.
That was also the same Packers Chiefs, the defensive pass interference, same game.
Oh, good call.
So no, they were that was just a thing. And then we kind of did the rest of the NFL thing there as well. So let's move on to head coach carousel. So obviously we have Black Monday coming up. We know that Chargers are going to be looking for a new head coach. It seems like that's going to be Jim Harbaugh. We know that Panthers are going to be looking for a new head coach. We know that the Commanders will be looking for a new head coach. Maybe the Patriots. I mean, what are your thoughts on this coaching cycle, and where do you think?
Did you forget the Raiders, by the way?
Oh yeah, Raiders as well.
Pierce is making a push for the full-time role. I would seriously consider giving it to him, but I'm sure they're going to go through their interview process. I mean, he'll be very much involved. But there's going to be a few jobs that definitely open up here. I think also the Falcons, Arthur Smith, I think that could open up fairly quickly. Obviously,
Titans with the win. I think he's safe.
I think Vrabel stays too. The Panthers, I think you already talked about. They're going to be getting a new head coach there as well. I think this is later on, not Black Monday. If the Dallas Cowboys don't go far in the playoffs, I think Mike McCarthy might be out of there. You can have all that regular season success. That's a franchise that hasn't been to a conference title game since 1995. So park the brakes on that one a little bit. The Harbaugh situation is in. What'd you say? Sorry.
You think Dan Quinn? You think they're setting up Dan Quinn to be the next guy?
I mean, he should get head coaching considerations. Yeah, he did a solid job, I thought, with Atlanta. Outside of the 28-3 blown lead, but I think he's a very solid defensive-minded coach. I think if you surround him with a good staff, especially offensively, he can make it work in another place. Their Chargers are fascinating to me. The Jim Harbaugh rumors are very rampant right now. There's rumors that he's met with them multiple times already. He's already hired Tom Brady's agent, which means it looks like he's pretty serious about potentially coming back to the NFL. I think it's the Chargers or the Raiders for him. I mean, those two franchises probably just make the most sense for Harbaugh at this point. The Chargers with Harbaugh would be at least more interesting with Herbert obviously there. They have a pretty stacked defense, to be honest. I don't know, though. You win a national title game and you leave. I don't know, man. That doesn't really...
He's also been suspended twice.
But I hear you, and you have that whole situation going on with Michigan, but is that going to matter to the Chargers? No. That's not going to matter at all. The Commanders, I think they're going to move on from Ron Rivera. Josh Harris wants a fresh start. Let's be real here. That's dysfunction junction over there in Washington. Other than those, I'm trying to think of other teams that could make moves. The Saints should honestly fire Dennis Allen, but they won't. He's a terrible head coach. I don't know how. I don't know what dirt he has on the Saints management and the ownership there, but his record, his overall record is like 20 games below 500, and he's still going to get another year there. That doesn't make much sense to me at all. But, other than the ones you mentioned or that I added as well, there doesn't really seem to be too many other potential openings. The Belichick situation is going to be fascinating. I think he's done there. I think they're going to move on. I think they're going to give them a fresh start. It's all going to come down to whether Belichick wants to coach again. Do you think he would want to coach another team, Adi?
Maybe if he has control.
Okay.
If you give him, like, I don't know if he would do it, and I know this team's been rumored for Belichick, but the Commanders, if Josh Harris were to go and say, we need a steady voice and a championship pedigree, you can pick the GM, if you can pick the guy who's going to be called the GM at the very least. I think they would. The only issue with that one is, what is Bill Belichick's track record in quarterbacks other than Tom Brady?
Not great, to say the least.
So if the Commanders have the number 1 overall pick and you were to get a good offensive coordinator that can work with Bill Belichick, maybe you can do it. I think part of it was he was too loyal. I think this is part of the reason why the post-Brady years were rough on him. He was too loyal. He was just picking from a retread group for offensive coordinators. If he goes to Washington, gets the control, picks a Drake May, or I don't think they're going to go Caleb Williams, but if they go Drake May or Michael Penix, even though I don't know if he's going to go top, I don't think he'll go top 3, but if Michael Penix has a really good performance and good combine, there's a good chance he could go ahead of Drake May, in my opinion. There's a small chance. There's a small chance, depending on how well he does, but
I don't think he's going to go ahead of Drake May. I think even if Penix wins the Natty tomorrow, I think he's still late first, early second round. That's my opinion, though.
But yeah, we're still way ahead. But yeah,
right.
We'll see what happens there. But if they can go out and get a young quarterback and a young offensive coordinator, maybe he has some success. But if he does the Bill O'Brien type of hire again, I don't think it matters. I don't think it matters about any of that stuff. But no, I think Commanders are interesting. I don't think Wink Martindale. I think that's gonna be that's gonna be a good spot there for someone for resources. I don't know if the stench of Dan Snyder is fully removed from Washington, so I don't know how desirable of a job that will be. Speaking of Dan Snyder, we have the next Dan Snyder with the Panthers. I don't know who's going to take that job because don't put rent down. Don't have a year rent. Have a 3-month rent at that point, because 3 months is probably how long you're going to be the head coach for the Panthers at this point.
Yeah, that's a disaster down there. I feel bad for Bryce Young. I feel bad for their fans. It got ugly a lot in Carolina this year. That's a fan base that deserves a lot better. David Tepper has not done enough at all for that franchise.
And then and they're just basically, without not really connecting these names to teams, but I think I'll start with this, but I think there are some names to look out for. Obviously, Ben Johnson, the Lions offensive coordinator, Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator for the Lions, is a good one.
I think Jonathan Jones said Johnson, the Panthers really like him for their head coach. I think he said that today on the NFL and CBS.
Yeah, so I think that's possibly a spot there. Frank Smith, the offensive coordinator, or the quote unquote offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. That's an interesting guy. I think we're going to see some defensive minded coaches. Steve Wilkes from the 49ers is an interesting guy. Obviously, we know the Panthers won't be the team he goes to, but by the way, but speaking of Commanders, you know what I could see the Commanders doing? I think Adam Peters, one of the executives from the 49ers, and Steve Wilkes. Maybe you can do that. That combination. Patrick Graham from the Raiders. I don't think Kellen Moore is going to get a look. I don't think Todd Monken's going to get a look at head coach. I think some of these younger, I'm gonna go back to what I was hinting at before, is the Bengals. If the Bengals look, Joe Burrow's cap hit is going to go from $19 million this year to $29 million next year, and then it's going to be in the 40s for the next few years after that. We saw Jamar Chase's comments. He wants his money. He doesn't really give a crap about. He doesn't seem to care about what other teams are doing. Other players are.
Goodbye, T. Higgins. There. See ya.
Yeah, and apparently this could be this game this year could have been the last year where you can see losing them Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd, Awuzie, the corner.
Is Tyler Boyd a free agent after this year?
I believe so, but I could be. So they could be losing a ton of pieces. I don't think they're going to the bed next year, but maybe if you're Brian Callahan, especially with what you did with Jake Browning, maybe you get another look as a head coach.
What about Lou Anarumo?
Yeah, that was the other name I was going to get to.
Lou Anarumo. I know the Bengals defense statistically was not that good this year, but last couple years before that, he had some pretty sound defenses. But
yeah, they lost their safeties.
Yeah, so I could see him getting consideration for a couple of these jobs for sure.
And here's the question: do you think if the jobs were offered to the coordinators, are they more willing to take those jobs this year than they would have been last year?
Yeah, just because of what happened with Burrow and the Bengals and who could be leaving this year compared to last year. I know Burrow's coming back, but they're still potentially going to lose a lot of talent with their salary cap situation.
Yeah, and I think that's why I said I think the Bengals might be a sinking ship at this point. Well, they're close to it. Like I said, they're going to be good, but I don't know if they're going to be that elite team next year. Look, I mean, yeah, obviously you got a draft pick there, so I think that's really it's all the cover from the head coach carousel. Obviously, we don't know what jobs are available. We're just kind of speculating on that stuff. Oh, by the way, before that, could you see any coaches that would shock you, but you wouldn't be extremely surprised if they get let go? Like I know you said, so for you it would be Mike McCarthy, right?
I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if he got fired if the Cowboys for example, say they lose in the first round next weekend. I think they should potentially move on, in my opinion, because you made the playoffs every year and you haven't gotten past the divisional round. And I know winning is hard in the NFL. Single elimination tournaments, they're a lot different than, NBA, NHL, MLB, where it's like best of 5, best of 7, all that stuff. But eventually, you need to break through, especially when you have a quarterback in Dak Prescott who's having the best season of his career this year. Your offense overall is good. Your defense is good, and it's led by Dan Quinn. You got to break through. I think, in my opinion, with how good the Cowboys have been this year, this team should at least go to the NFC Championship game. I think if you beat the Commanders and you get the number 2 seed, you're going to play that number 7 seed and it's probably going to be what? Green Bay? Oh, that'd be Mike McCarthy's former team obviously coming in. You should be able to win that game. And then if you're the number 2 seed, you play another team like, I don't know, the Rams, another divisional winner, excuse me. I think they should at least get to the NFC Championship game this year and take a stab at the 49ers, in my opinion. That's how I see it.
Yeah. So right now, Dallas is playing Green Bay next
Yeah.
week. That's way it'll work. They got the second seed. So let's see. So they would. Yeah, no, you're right. So if they next week will be Green Bay, and then more than likely, if they beat Green Bay, it will either be the Rams or the Lions.
Yeah. Or potentially the Philadelphia if they win their playoff game.
Yeah. Speaking of that, if the Eagles do not get to the NFC Championship game, I'm not going to put money on it, but Nick Sirianni could be on the hot seat
Next year. I don't think this year. I
Yeah,
think he has shown some faults. I will give you that. But if they play like this next year and you see similar results, I think that seat's going to warm up really quickly in Philadelphia.
yeah. Like I said, I don't think he'll be fired, but Doug Peterson was fired they fired Doug Peterson after a few years after the Super Bowl run. I think the Eagles could be within the next 4 or 5 years looking at a new coach. I honestly think they could be. So that's kind of we'll end the talk there on the head coach talk. Now let's talk about the Michigan and Washington game. Obviously, we talked about the Jim Harbaugh stuff. Those were two really good games. Those were two really good games. I was rooting for Michigan. I'll be honest. I was rooting for Michigan because I did not want Alabama to win. The Texas and Washington game, I did not really care about. That was an interesting game. Before we talk about this matchup, should they move the games earlier? Because it was 11:30 on the East Coast for that Texas Washington game.
I was later than that. That game ended past
No,
midnight.
no, no. Halftime was 11. Halftime was 11 o'clock.
Oh, right. Yeah, good call. Because that game didn't end until 12:30 at night, at least, if I recall correctly. It might have been 12:45.
Yeah.
Actually, I agree. I think, and I know the Rose Bowl is very iconic. Move that kickoff time up a little bit. I know you're in California. Move that up maybe a couple more hours because, I mean, kids got to go to school that next day, especially coming off winter break. I know some college kids aren't fully back yet, but for like the people in, elementary, middle school, high school that love sports, people have to go to bed. You have school the next day. People have to wake up at like 6:37. People have to work the next day as well. So I agree with that overall. But man, those two games were so much fun. I love the Rose Bowl, man. I will go to my grave thinking that's my favorite college football game of the year. It is my goal to go out to Pasadena to see a Rose Bowl game one year. Just the scenery, the tradition, the game has always been fun. That game against Alabama was incredible. Credit to Michigan for coming back to win that game in overtime. Even the Texas-Washington game, it looked like Washington had that wrapped up, and then all of a sudden Texas just comes right back and made it real interesting at the end. But I expect this game on Monday to be really close. I expect it to also be high scoring. I don't think it's going to be, like a 40-41 game, but I could see maybe a 35-31 game, something like that. You have two very good offenses, two very good defenses as well, especially Michigan's defense. That unit is awesome. Seeing that unit go up against Michael Penix is going to be a lot of fun. And you also got two good running backs for Washington. And then with Michigan, you got Blake Corum. This is going to be a fun national championship. It's two teams that you're not used to seeing, but I think it's going to be quite a bit of fun.
Yeah, no, I think I agree. I think Washington I think they'll win this game. I just think that Penix will make just a few more big plays. I know that Michigan's going to go and get him at some point. But no, I think this is going to be better than last year's. Last year's game was absolutely horrendous. Yeah, I think this is I think the Michigan Alabama game was fun. I don't know if it was a bad snap on that last play, or that led to a bad play call. It wasn't a terrible play call. If you could just go but enough about that game. But this game's gonna be fun. I mean, Penix, there are some big plays. I do not know. I think whichever, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you know what you need to do? Fire your receiver coach and bring in the dang receiver coach from Washington. because
Right.
oh my god, seeing the Chiefs receivers drop passes and then seeing some of these like a Dunze and some of these other guys just catch the way they caught the ball. Washington, granted, they got a good quarterback, but they have done a really good job of making these catches. And I think those receivers were putting on a clinic. Michigan obviously has a good run game. They can get a few good plays. I think the pass rush is going to be key here. If you're giving Michael Penix enough time, he will dice you up. And if you put him under pressure, maybe you can, and you have a good run game, that would be the key to success for Michigan. But yeah, it's gonna be really interesting. I think this is gonna be a fun game to watch. And I think is this the first time in like 4 years, 4 years that the college football playoffs were not. They did not have an SEC team. Because Georgia was the last year.
I believe it's the first time in 10 years that there's not a SEC team in the championship game. I'm actually going to double check that real quick. You can keep talking. Yeah. But I believe
it might be like Ohio State, Clemson, or something. Or no.
Yeah, I'm going to just make sure real quick. 2015 was Alabama, Clemson. Same matchup the next year. Alabama, Georgia, 2017. Clemson, Alabama, 2018. LSU, Clemson, 2019. Alabama played in 2020. 2021 was in 2022 was Georgia. Yeah, first time since 2014 there's no SEC team playing in the final.
Yeah, so it's gonna be really interesting. It's gonna be a fun game, and it's gonna be interesting, especially see what some of the draft prospects. I mean, obviously we talked about Michael Penix. Is there anyone? Do you think there's anyone else that could really raise their draft stock with a good performance or drop it with a bad one?
Sorry, what was that?
You think there's someone that could really increase or decrease their draft stock on Monday other than Penix?
Honestly, like this is probably a layup, but Blake Corum, I think if he has another big game, he could go even higher than what he's projected to do right now. Because I know he's at least projected to be a top 20 pick in this year's draft, I would say. At least top 20.
I think he's more of a second round pick, but maybe could be in the late first.
Oh, you had him at the late second? I had him as a first round pick, to be honest.
No. I think he's first round talent. I think he's first round talent, but he might be in that group where because of the position he plays, he might get pushed into the second round.
That's fair. I know it's hard to take running backs in the first round of the draft, but I just think this guy is so freaking good. I think he's the best back in college football right now.
I think he
could definitely be a first round pick.
I think Rome Odunze, the receiver from Washington, could be a guy like if he has a monster game, he could be in like that 15 to 20 range. I know and because Keon Coleman is obviously someone who a lot of people kind of may have ranked higher. I think people might forget a little bit about Keon Coleman if Odunze has a good game. But yeah, so I think this show, we'll have to show on that note. We'll be back next week. We'll talk. We'll preview we'll talk about the wild card games, whatever games we're playing at that time when we record, and then we'll talk college football. If there's any coaching hires, we might have another discussion on that one. And obviously, if there's anything in baseball, I mean, it's been a really cold market in that one. The White Sox must be smoking something because apparently they want 4 top 10 prospects for Dylan Cease. I don't understand that one. I guess it's just the Dodgers might go after Teoscar Hernandez. So it's interesting. Obviously, the Dolphins are talking with their pitchers. But before we end, what was your quick reaction to Braves getting Chris Sale?
It's annoying. It's just going to be another pitcher that's probably going to do well against the Nationals. I mean, Chris Sale, he's fine now. He's not what he used to be, but he's still a good piece for the Braves because the Braves are going to be really good again next year.
Yeah, and I think we'll end the show there, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of the games tonight, and we'll see you next week for the NFL playoffs.